If we turn the society to a situation where people please themselves about how they deal with those whom they don't like, then who is to be the next victim?
Yeah, well, people who throw stones better make sure they don't live in glass houses, Alan.
Well, we're not talking about anyone living in glass houses, Chopper.
Yeah, well, I never got arrested in a public toilet in London.
Yeah.
Oh, Chopper, I'm sorry. I'm now pulling the plug on this. I actually have no desire to listen to anything else that you have to say. Thank you very much for calling. That's as polite as I can possibly be.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Racist War. What you heard just then was a piece of Australian classic TV. That dates back, I believe, to the early 90s, maybe mid-90s. And that was on the Kerry Ann show, for those who remember Kerry Ann. And she had on, as guest, Alan Jones. Now, he was on because the ABC were under fire somewhat for a scene that involved Libby Gore. Libby Gore played this character called Elle McFeast, which was supposed to be a play on Elle Macpherson. And Libby Gore, Jewish, by the way. But anyway, she had like some variety show on, and Chopper Read appeared on it, and he was completely shit-faced. Apparently, they left him alcohol in the green room, and so he got thoroughly shedded before he...
Holy shit. Holy fucking shit.
I think you can still watch that video as well on YouTube if you have a look. So Alan Jones came out on the Kerry Ann show to condemn Chopper for that. And then, as you heard, Chopper said, yeah, well, I never got arrested in a public toilet in London. Because, well, did you hear that? Jonesy was actually found and charged for indecent acts or something to that effect in a public toilet in Soho, which is like, the gay capital of the UK. And he was said to have been performing what's called cottaging. That is something in America known as cruising. Basically just means you're looking for other gay men to,
Oh, yeah, it's like bird dogging as well. I mean, to be fair, like I'm a subject expert.
I'm sure you are. Was it Senator Larry Craig in America got caught doing it as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're wondering, did this sort of come out of thin air in terms of the allegations that have just been made against Alan Jones? No, he's got a history of this. He may not have been, convicted of anything. As we said, like those charges, for example, were dropped. But at least the rumors of his behavior towards young boys and men have been there for decades. They've been there since he was a school teacher, since he was a rugby union coach. And yeah, I mean, recently we've just had more of them that I believe span over at least 2 decades. And
in all fairness, we're talking about a gay man. Statistically speaking,
Yeah, and I mean, funnily enough, Alan Jones will not publicly comment on his sexuality, which clearly means he is gay, all right? Because otherwise he would deny it.
Okay, so sorry, like just to reiterate, do we know the genders of these 8 victims?
Yeah, they said they're all boys.
There we go.
So they're
all right.
Well, they're all male. So, like, one of them, for example, was Alan Jones's driver, and he was said to be 20 at the time. And police said that of the current 8 victims, I mean, there's bound to be a lot more.
Holy shit, Mr. Popular.
Sorry, it was my mobile going off.
Yeah, there's just this rose to like, guys, just calm down.
So there's 8 victims we've got in this investigation, and one of them is said to be, or was at the time, only 17. So a minor, a child in the eyes of the law. And again, that's actually nothing new for Alan Jones either. So, Were you surprised by this, Nolsey?
No, as a gay man.
No. Oh, and 24 charges altogether, I think. Eight victims, 24 charges altogether.
Well, I mean, you had to double test the asshole and use the mouth at least once, right?
Oh, my God.
There we go.
So, look, this was said to be a far-reaching, lengthy investigation, obviously involving multiple people, and they finally went and nabbed him from his luxury apartment in Harbourside, Sydney. They seem to bloody take their time with this stuff, don't they? I mean, like him and Rolf Harris and what's his name, Bill Cosby, they're all in their 80s by the time they get them. It's like, geez, it's a bit late, especially when it was sort of an open secret like it was with Jonesy. You think, bloody hell, why does it take so long? But anyway, wait and see. My prediction is, he'll probably die in jail. He can't have. He's 83, so he can't have that many years left. So, yeah, I watch with anticipation.
Oh, I mean, to be fair, like, what's the over/under on him just getting one of those like sweetheart, like, oh God, we're just doing this, and this, and this, and this because I'm a conscientious judge. Oh,
I don't know. I mean, look, he's denying it.
He's
denying everything. He has been denying it for a while. He hasn't actually, I don't think he's appeared in public in the last few months because he did go to that ADH TV YouTube channel, because he didn't go back to Sky News or 2GB or anything. He just had an online presence. But lately, I don't think he's even had that. So, it looked like he was kind of hiding. All right. Well, anyway, we're here to talk about a lot more than just Jonesy. We're on episode 231, and we've actually been away for, about 2 months. So we do apologize for that. The original hiatus was only meant to be about 3 or 4 weeks.
The scars from my top surgery have now healed.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, look, we were away for various reasons, but one reason was because I've teased this before. Like I've said that there's a little project that I've been working on. I managed to get a big chunk of it done while we were on break. And I will reveal today that project is actually a book. So it's a fiction book. It's not a non-fiction political treatise or anything like that. It's a book that is supposed to get across a white nationalist message through fiction. And, you just think of books like The Turner Diaries and Hunter. Like, this has been done before. There's certainly white nationalist literature out there. And, I thought I'd have a crack at it. So, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say you beat me. Like you published your book before I published mine. My Jewish sex life and how to raise wolves. No, it is. No, it's from the samples you gave back in the day. Like it's like a slice of life, but for one of our guys. Imagine just again being in this corner, being in this tormented little tortured corner. And actually having to go throughout your day-to-day life. Also, how to hold yourself.
Well, I won't give everything away, of course. What I will say is, I really sold out, and I wrote this book in American English, and it's set in America.
Faggot.
Yeah, well, look, I did that very intentionally, and that's because, America is like the falling empire that is sort of at the center of all this, and if attention should be anywhere, it should be on America and middle class white America. So the book tells the story of a young American lawyer who goes through a red pilling process. He himself was raised by liberal parents, so he just kind of took on liberalism as a default position. But then throughout various experiences he has, he starts to change his mind. And that's the thrust of the book. So the other reason why I'm announcing.
So he's like
now,
Renfield, but racist.
What's Renfield?
A property lawyer that goes to meet Dracula from Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay, can't say I've heard of it.
Disappointing.
One of the other reasons I'm announcing it now is just so it's a bit of a self-motivator. I've only got like a little bit left, like a few pages, and then I've got to, proofread it, of course.
How about this? If it's not done by the time, like, your party fucking happens, I'm coming there with a big leather belt. I'm going to fucking wail on your nutsack. How about that?
Yeah, well, look, everyone gets permission to get on my back about this. Because the more you do that, the more motivation I'll have, and the faster I'll get it completed. So feel free.
All right.
Okay, now, other thing. We do have donations available now, believe it or not. So
that top surgery was expensive.
Right now, there is only one form, unfortunately, and that's Bitcoin. That seems to be the best and safest means of receiving donations. So if you go to theracer.biz/donate, you will see either the wallet address or the QR code that you can use to donate to us. And yes, I know.
I'm going to be honest. You're
away for 2 months, and then we come
you're
back.
You're funding Finian's silly beans addiction. Those little beans, magic beans that roll down the slopes and etc. That's why he's spending this all on. It's magic beans.
That's right. Yeah. No, but I mean, really, we do spend it on things like web hosting and accounts, and there definitely are costs involved here, and we've only.
Oh shit! When's the web hosting coming up again?
I'm not sure. I'll be sure to hit you up when it does. So.
I was going to say, my brother in Christ. It's been a while.
Yeah, it might. Maybe you've gotten away with it. Like it just kind of automatically charged, and I didn't notice it. In which case, I really need to keep track of my transactions a little more carefully. But yeah,
I'll bring an extra large charcuterie board out with that. You like meat and cheese?
I know it seems a bit much, like after we take 2 months off to come back and start asking for money. But I mean, over the years, I've gotten a lot of emails and messages from people saying, hey, I want to give you guys money. How do I do it? And up until now, they just haven't been able to. So yeah, theracer.biz/donate. Last thing, I think this is the last thing before we get into the rest of the content, is that we want to bring back the live shows. So, yes. Nosy and I are still kind of working out the details of that. But look, we're aiming, I don't know, about 2 weeks' time or so.
Yeah.
Maybe sooner. We'll see how it goes.
So the Bug Chasers War and everything is going to be live.
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll probably just be the race live.
Yeah, no.
It'll function much like, XYZ Live did. And, well, talking about donations again, we should be able to accept super chats as well. So that is the other way you can get donations to us. Okay.
Anyway, so we'll be taking a certain time slot during the weekend. It's a very good time slot. It's the morning to evening time slot. We're not starting a time slot, are we?
Well, look, we're not going to take a time slot from others, people who we should consider collaborators rather than competitors. But I don't know. We'll sort that out. That's one of the things we've got to suss out.
I was like, Colin's in. We're on the table about Colin's. Like it's we're on the fence. You guys just need to show us that you got like really good character and etc.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it is good to be back. I've missed ranting and raving about all the things that pissed me off in Australian politics. So here we are, back with a vengeance, ready to get into it. And, well, I know you're all probably sick of American politics, but we are going to open this show talking about Donald Trump, who, of course...
Trump?
Yeah.
He's
still not inaugurated for... like another 6 weeks or so. nonetheless, he's doing things like picking his cabinet and putting all sorts of kooky celebrities into these high-profile roles. And, I mean, what we're asking here, of course, is what does this mean for Australia? Now, a figure whose name just kept coming up when we talk about this is Kevin Rudd. Of course, he was appointed as Australia's ambassador to the US by Anthony Albanese.
I was gonna say, like, I literally, like, I heard him on AM radio going to work. It's like, oh, like, is Kevin Rudd like a good fit? Blah blah blah, because he's straight up shit talked the president of the United States of America, and it was like, oh, like a lot of ambassadors should talk the president. The president, the executive branch isn't all that, impressive or meaningful. Blah blah blah, and then, well, it turns out Kevin Rudd actually shit talked the entire fucking, well, his appointees, his regime, I guess. Probably a better word for it.
But look, it is definitely true that Rudd has, on many different occasions, gone and shit-talked Trump. There's no doubt about that. This is both public statements and tweets. But look, the thing is, like, who hasn't knocked Trump in some way?
Yes.
I'll remind people that J.D. Vance himself
knocked Trump, yes.
Yeah, like some horrifically insulting things about Donald Trump, and now he is the vice president-elect. So this is actually quite standard procedure here. There's still people... what's his name? John Bolton talked shit about Trump, and then he ended up in his cabinet.
RJK talks shit about Trump, but at least he got to blame it on the brainworms.
Right, and he's in the cabinet now. So, no, Sky News especially have been going on about this, saying that, Kevin Rudd's position as ambassador is completely untenable because he said nasty things about Trump. Oh, and also Trump said that he didn't know much about Kevin Rudd, but he's heard that he's a nasty guy and that he wouldn't last long. So by that, he could only have meant, when I take the presidency back, he won't be ambassador for very long. But remember, Trump talked some shit too. So, no. And also, unlikely allies.
That's the most redundant sentence. Trump talks some shit too. Yes, of course.
Well, of course, we all know that. But look, even Tony Abbott said that he backs Trump as ambassador. It was hard to believe. But he did say, he's like, oh, look, we all know, whatever we think about Kevin Rudd, he's a hyperactive character. And that's like what you need in a job like that. When it comes to...
I think the Americans... If we had Tony Abbott as an ambassador, I think we'd get torn apart for that onion eating scene.
Oh, that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people want him to be the UK ambassador. Mainly because he's such a staunch monarchist, but he was also born there as well. He doesn't retain a citizenship, of course, but he was born in England. Okay, so yeah, you also had Dan Scavino, who retweeted Kevin Rudd's congratulations to Donald Trump on winning the election with a GIF next to it that was an hourglass turning, suggesting that Kevin Rudd's days were numbered. But look, Albanese, who remember is actually an old-time Rudd backer. If you think back to the Rudd-Gillard wars that went on within Labor, Anthony Albanese was always on Kevin Rudd's side. There's even footage of him crying, where he said he was so upset that he had to vote for Kevin Rudd because he still likes Julia Gillard so much. But yeah, they're all buddies. Not a surprise that Albo appointed him, put the word in for him in the first place. But he's still backing him, so yeah. I will be saying that he's there to stay. All right, now, what about the tariffs? So this seems to be one of the pieces of policy that Trump actually wants to adhere to. During his last administration, he did early on actually whack some, fairly harsh tariffs on American competitors in an attempt anyway to bring manufacturing back on shore. That was pretty limited, but at least he actually did something. So, as it is at the moment, he said that there are a number of countries that he wishes to impose tariffs on between 10% and 20%. And, we can be sure that, say, China, for example, will be one of those countries. Now,
a good industrial tariff starts about 15%, so that might actually make a difference, but only for high value added industries. So that's engraving, milling, machining, precision, EDM, etc. So that's still very limited, unfortunately.
Right, and I mean, where he's really got to put those tariffs is not China. He's got to put it on India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They're the countries, the Pajit countries, that are taking over manufacturing now, because China is sort of moving past that stage of its economy, past the mass manufacturing and sweatshops and all of that, and they've actually got a genuine middle class now. So, yeah, after not too long, you'll be saying, I wish we had all of that made in China stuff back, because now all your stuff is going to be made in India.
Yes, because when you open up your iPhone, instead of the soul of a dead child who worked on it, you're just going to get a pile of shit.
Right. So look, I think Albo has spoken with Trump on the phone, but it's just been, very routine ceremonial stuff. I don't believe that he's actually talked to him about the issue of tariffs and free trade. Albo just was at APEC, which of course is the economic summit for the Asia Pacific. And well, look, I mean, Trump wasn't there because, well, he's not president yet. But he did come in with some rhetoric that said it all, where he said that he was saying that, protectionism hurts everyone, doesn't help anyone. And Australia's commitment is still very much to open free trade. So, yeah, how about that? Like an old, socialist from the Labor Party going on about the virtues of free, unfettered global capitalism, while Trump is saying, no, we actually need to have some economic nationalism and protect our own industries. And that's the thing. I mean, Albo, couldn't you actually just follow it up and say, whack some tariffs down yourself on our competitors?
I guess not.
No. I mean,
in all fairness, in terms of overall geopolitics, is it worthwhile putting, staking our horse with the kind of bipolar America, or is it, worth staking a horse with China? Which is, by the way, a lot of the things a lot of leftists are saying this right now. Is the AUKUS agreement a good thing? Blah blah blah. And we've talked about this in nausea. Ab nausea, but unfortunately, geopolitically, Australia is just better off with fucking China, materially at least.
I mean, yeah, and I have no issue with trade with China or trade with Japan or whatever, so long as our own industries are protected. And how do we have done
for
that?
every dollar you get a citizen back.
Yeah, well, okay, something like that. But no, I mean, if we actually didn't tear down our trade barriers, which, started with Hawke and Keating in the 80s, maybe Holden would still exist. Maybe Ford would still manufacture some of their cars here in Australia. But no, that's all been hollowed out. And, now we're left in this ridiculous position where we say we're going to manufacture our own nuclear-powered submarines. No, we're not. We're probably not even going to get them, But if we do, there is no way we're going to make them ourselves. That just isn't happening.
I was going to say, the Polaris, which is what we're getting. I toured a Polaris when I was in Manhattan. I went inside a Polaris, looked at the insides, came out of it because it was in a fucking museum. Again, we're likely not going to get that submarine, even though it's in a goddamn fucking museum and it was designed in the 50s.
I thought that was a Megadeth song. Polaris. It's a good song.
Whatever.
Dave Mustaine can write about some ridiculous things.
Want to move on to the next one?
Yep. So yeah, Xi Jinping was at APEC for 2 days, and look, he's basically like begging Trump, don't whack any of those tariffs on us. Now, of course, like I said,
also calling us fucking. Oh god. The world's most fucking underhanded compliment.
Yeah.
I wish more leaders would be like Anthony Albanese. Yeah, like the fucking dude who has no fucking balls to his name. The spineless motherfucker who was like next to you, like looking like he's leaning over a fucking couch.
Right, well look, Xi Jinping actually just oversaw the opening of a Chinese-controlled Pacific megaport. That's showing that, well, they still intend on some heavy international trade. And it is in those Chinese ports where you find those fully automated wharfs. I suggest just looking up a YouTube video of it if you haven't seen it. They're quite incredible to watch. And, sometimes it's said that industrial technology, hasn't really gone anywhere in the past few decades. Well, look at those automated wharfs. That's different. That's industrial technology that has really, really gone somewhere.
And also play CNC's Industro Funk while you're looking at for the optimal viewing experience.
Okay, and RFK. He's going to be the U.S. Secretary
the worms
of
are
Health
back.
And Human Services. So he announced on Twitter that... Trump announced on Twitter that RFK would end the chronic disease epidemic and make America great and healthy again. So...
He does a lot of health shit, yeah, and yes, a lot of his health shit is quack shit, but honestly, some of it is okay. I think that Trump missed a grand opportunity to make him head of the CIA.
You reckon he would have done well there?
Yes. I mean, his head would be removed smooth off, but... I mean, come on. There's some kind of poetic justice there, isn't it? Being the nephew of JFK.
Well, look, the reason I bring him up is because RFK says he is determined to ban the worst agricultural chemicals that are already prohibited in other countries. So that would also mean that when it comes to importing goods from other countries, if they have used those chemicals, they will not import them. Now, that has Australian farmers very worried, of course, because that puts Australian produce at risk. I really doubt, how far RFK would be able to go with measures like that. Considering, I don't know a hell of a lot about the guy, but he does seem to be one of those types that basically believes whatever conspiracy you can think of.
About his family, he's correct, and also he's super paranoid because, imagine being a fucking Kennedy in America.
Should we start taking bets now on when he'll be shot in the head?
Jesus Christ, I don't think I could. do we have to get together and do an over and under and like right? So if he's shot in the just this much, he's shot in the head this much. Motorcade, is that a plus or a minus? Anyway.
Oh geez.
No, he ate a bear. He ate raw bear meat and got worms.
Who, RFK did?
Yes.
Why the fuck did he do that?
Because he's fucking weird.
Yeah, I'd gathered that part. All right, let's move on to some other news. So, on Israel and Gaza, it looks like Labor is, I don't know, maybe still trying to go after that lost West Sydney vote. But anyway, we have broken ranks with America and Israel, and that was to vote in favor of a draft UN resolution that recognizes the permanent sovereignty of Palestinians and the Golan Heights to natural resources in the occupied territories.
A fucking million Jews cried out, and every single fucking Jewish organization group and etc. The ones who didn't understand that this is literally just symbolic and means nothing, cried out. Yeah. Also, the AGA got banned off of Twitter for a little bit. That was funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they threatened to kill politicians.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, like most of these other votes, it always gets a majority. America and Israel find themselves pretty lonely in these votes. So 159 countries in total voted for this. And that included not just us, but the UK, New Zealand, France, Germany, and Japan. So it's not like it was North Korea and Iran and, countries like that, although they would have still voted for it, of course.
The axis of evil. Oh.
But it goes way beyond that. It's actually just regular Western nations now that are voting in this way. Now,
it's one of the worst things looking at this entire situation and realizing that Jews are being so overly and overtly genocidal, murderous, bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
That the entire fucking even people that don't know about them are just thinking what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Yeah, I mean, just about every day when I switch on,
again, it went from
your apartment building just blown up.
Yeah, it went from the occupied territory in Gaza to Lebanon, an entire another fucking country.
Yeah,
and actually Iran, because they struck Iran. Yeah, so they're just fucking literally throwing stones at every single fucking Arab in the fucking the Middle East.
Right. So anyway, this resolution, and well, like we said, not binding or anything. It is just what's the word I'm looking for? What is wrong with my brain?
Symbolic.
Right now? Symbolic. I'm sorry, it's been a long
ceremonial.
So it does demand that Israel stop destroying infrastructure such as water and sewage pipelines and electricity networks, and stop confiscating Palestinian homes and farms. And guess what? The Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council, AJAC, said Australia had consistently abstained from voting, or voted against such proposals since 2003. Yeah, that's true.
But it's my apartment block. It's my apartment block. God gave me this apartment block. Ugh. And you're an anti-Semite for denying me this apartment block. Yes, I just blew the fucking brains out of a fucking 9-year-old girl in front of this apartment block to get it. But it's my apartment block.
Yeah.
And ironically, that's a conversation that's probably been had over there.
Hey, look.
Terrible people.
Before we get on to the next topic, which is on electoral funding, I'm just, because we're talking about Arabs right now, I'm reading a book called The Cronulla Riots, The Inside Story, which, as you can imagine, is about the Cronulla Riots back in 2005. That was effectively a white chimp out against Lebanese perverts and thugs. who were just constantly like sexually harassing white women at the beach. I'm really enjoying the book so far, despite some like ridiculous conservative points that it makes. But I was thinking that if we get the live show going again, I'd like to do an episode on that because the 19th anniversary is coming up. It's on the 11th of December. So I would really like to talk to someone who was there or, was, say, in the surrounding areas and knows what it's like to live in those parts of Western Sydney.
So, could we actually get someone to admit that legally?
Well, you can be completely anonymous. Obviously we respect people's privacy in that. But I mean, look, if you are one of those people, you know someone, whatever, maybe get in contact with me, message me on Telegram, email me, basefinian@protonmail.com. And yeah, would love to talk to you about it. Okay, let's go to electoral funding. Now, this is on reforms to donations. Now, on face value, this looks good because it's supposed to be about keeping big money out of politics. So, think Clive Palmer effectively buying his way into Parliament. Now, funnily enough, Clive Palmer said that he was going to take this to court, saying that it's unconstitutional and basically is, unfair towards non-major parties like his own, which does suggest, doesn't it, that Palmer might be considering another tilt. As far as I know, the United Australia Party remains unregistered. So I don't know what the status is.
I mean, they still have Babbitt, and he says faggot and retard.
Yeah, but he's like...
And the N-word.
He technically, though, is an independent because the party isn't registered. Now, of course, he would still answer to Clive Palmer and support the party platform.
I don't know. Is he we're looking at Twitter stuff, right? Like, is he answering to anyone, or is he just having a fucking fun time for himself? Honestly, I support this. By the way, harassing people on Twitter is amazing.
I know. I need to get back on there. I was banned from it many years ago.
Well, good. Get back on. I've dropped the N-bomb like 5 times today.
Get me a burner number and I'll be there.
All right. No, look, a lot of people say like, oh, it's, to restrict parties. No, I think it's a response to general political instability. They don't want... Okay, so long explain. The conditions in which the Labour Party were made in the, the 1910s, we're actually kind of seeing right now. Political instability, cost of living, blah, 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 new ideologies rising up. They allowed the Labour Party to actually, be created during that period of time because there was more, it was better to the Commonwealth than communism. Any new political movement right now would be geopolitically destabilizing.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the best example of that would be the Muslim vote.
Yes.
Talking about Arabs again. And, I mean, not just because of being a destabilizing force, which they would be. But,
imagine telling...
who do they threaten the most? They threaten the Labour Party the most.
Yes. I was going to say, like, also imagine telling Jews, like, oh, yes, your fucking puppet goy state, like, has a Muslim party in it. And also, like, you're fucking, like, not dipshit, sorry. But, you're kind of, like, retard conservative types. Imagine telling them that there's now a Islamic party that has seats. It would just energize everyone to be... I don't know. Racist?
Well, look, I mean, Albo said that, that would be voting on religious lines. Other people came out and said, well, what are you talking about? We have the Australian Christians and, you had Fred Nile in New South Wales Parliament for decades. And it's like, yeah, but that is a religious faith of the majority, or at least it was. That's still very reflective of Australian society. A Muslim vote is not, okay, to say the least. And yeah, that would embolden Muslims, Arabs in this country to believe that they have the right to wield political power, and they would do so at our expense. You know, I'm sure a lot of them see it as a zero-sum game, and they think that the political arena is something they need to get involved in so as to take power from Whitey. No, I've no doubt they think that way.
It's actually logical, to be honest. But yeah.
So let's just give you a bit of detail in terms of what this electoral funding reform bill would involve. So they want to limit political donors to $20,000 per candidate each calendar year. There would be an anti-avoidance provision which would cap donors at $600,000 in total to apply to companies, individuals, business groups, unions, and any other donors. Candidates would, for the first time, face spending limits set at $800,000 per candidate and $90 million for a political party across the nation. Wow, did Palmer even get to $90 million in the last election where he really splurged?
Oh,
I remember it was huge. Like, it was in the tens of millions, but I still don't think he quite cracked 90 million.
Party funding 2023 Australia.
So, well, okay, while you're looking at that, I mean, one of the other figures I said there was $800,000 per candidate.
210 million. So damn close.
210 million?
210, yeah.
Oh, shit, so it's even more. Did he really spend that much in one election?
No, that's all parties.
Oh, all parties, yeah. But,
yes.
But what about Palmer?
Okay, so that's the UAP, right?
Yeah.
UAP funding. 156.
Really? In one election? Yeah. God damn. Okay,
well, no, over a 20 period polling day. Okay, like why?
Yeah, I mean, like over the 6-week election cycle. That's what I mean.
Yeah, it'd be like fucking like 20 million then.
Okay. All right.
Maybe
so
18.
Yeah, I mean, that number of 90 million obviously is pretty high anyway.
Yeah.
And I think, it would only be the likes of Clive Palmer who would get up to those levels. However, the amount of 800,000 per candidate, well, I know that several of the Teals in the last election got up around the $1 million mark. I remember it was about $1 million also to take out Tony Abbott in, what's his seat again? Warringah. So you could say that, obviously we mentioned Palmer, but also Simon Holmes à Court, the guy who splurges his dad's trust fund money on green candidates.
Again, keep my inheritance and also spend it on poppers for the gay sex bar.
Okay, so the last important detail here about these changes is that there would be near real-time disclosures of donations, as well as a dramatic slashing of the threshold for disclosure from $1,000 to, from $16,900 to $1,000. So in other words, if you donate $1,000 or more to any political candidate whatsoever, you have to dox yourself, basically. You have to identify yourself as the source of that money. So, yeah. So critics, as you can imagine, are saying that these reforms would just serve the incumbents it might not be so bad for, say, the independents who are already there, but it may create barriers to future independents.
Mostly to radicals, I believe. Like, this is what this is targeted towards. Anyway, so my full name is Reese, middle name or middle letter A, and then last name Round.
Okay. This is another one of these jokes that has just gone right over my head. I have no idea what Knowles is talking about.
Reese around.
Okay. Oh, as in, yeah, okay, fine.
There we go.
Oh, jeez.
Took you a hot second.
Yeah, it did. Okay. How about we talk about the highly entertaining topic of superannuation? Now, the Australian has been running a series of hit pieces against Cbus and its chairman, Wayne Swan. So, Cbus, if you don't know, is basically the superannuation fund for construction workers, or at least that's the main clientele.
I still remember seeing their little poster cards at construction sites, like zip tied to like the fences and etc. Like, join Cbus for a good retirement.
Yeah, but I mean, look, Cbus have actually been shown to be a super fund with good returns. Compared to some of the other ones out there, they're actually pretty highly rated.
Yes, their past work is good, but we can't suggest their future work is also going to be good.
Right,
past performance does not indicate future performance.
Right, well, what are we talking about? So at the moment, there has been an alleged mishandling of around $20 million in insurance money, and that is money that is supposed to be given to grieving families or those with disabilities. So as you can imagine, construction being a dangerous industry, unfortunately, some of their clientele may be killed on site, and obviously then the family is owed compensation money. Cbus have been accused of mishandling that money. Now, as well as being linked to construction workers, kind of by default, they're linked to the CFMEU. Pretty much anyone in the CFMEU, their superannuation was with Cbus, like 99.9% of them. But they're also tied to, because Wayne Swan is on the board, Wayne Swan is actually also the president, the federal president of the Labor Party. I think he has been for a while now. So the Australian are basically running all of these hit pieces because they hate Cbus and they hate Wayne Swan, because it's just like the antithesis of all they stand for, like big unions in the Labor Party and unions actually delivering for their members. So I'm skeptical as to what's happening here. So the chief executive of Cbus did appear before a Senate committee recently and did apologize and say that their behavior is far from perfect. But, didn't quite say that, they had mishandled $20 million worth of money. So
Hammers, right? Down on like aisle 19 in the tool section, Hammers.
Do you remember those Cbus ads with that guy with like the really boring voice?
I remember the ones where like ba-ba, 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 join Cbus, blah, blah, blah. I saw so much shit for Cbus. God, they must spend so much money on fucking advertising. I was like, you do realize you're advertising to dudes who have shown up to the work site high on meth, right?
Well, yeah, look, nowadays, like, I managed to avoid the vast majority of advertising. But yeah, I definitely do remember back in the days of free-to-air TV, like there were just always Cbus ads on. And it had that economist, Bernie something, with a real dreary voice. He sort of sounded like the Sandman off Good News Week, if you know him.
It's Good News Week.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, to be fair, like I'm more interested in Boris the Bear from fucking Playtime.
All right. Our favorite topic, immigration. So, we all know about the High Court case that effectively made the whole concept of indefinite detention in Australia illegal. So, people who were in kind of immigration limbo, they would say stateless, or, their home country refused to take them back because maybe they were a pedophile or something like that. Quite a few cases like that, actually. So we would just kind of keep them indefinitely in detention, and a whole bunch of them walked free. Well, it looks like there's another case that is going to go to the High Court. I think we've mentioned this before, but this actually concerns the case of two individuals who are both foreign drug dealers. One of them, on October the 1st, was quietly released into the public. And when I say that, I mean, try finding a news article on it. Labor managed to do it very discreetly, and the Australian newspaper has only just received documents confirming that, court documents, that is. So this guy, Vietnamese drug dealer, so it must be heroin we're talking about there.
Yep.
Even though he is already free, they're taking this to the High Court. Now, why would that be? He wants compensation. So not only would this be a really bad precedent in terms of, say, other drug dealers who are being held in detention, but it means the government could be on the hook to paying them out hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, for being illegally detained during that time. So yeah, this is definitely another case where we need legislation to be able to counteract these shitty court decisions that are happening.
We need to really, as the country, reconsider the Vietnamese.
Yeah, well, we do, and
as an entity, like the Jungle Asians from the south, they lost a war. Well, won, but really lost a war. I mean, look at the babies. Anyway, why are they here?
Well, they shouldn't be. Now, again,
also, they only have 5 last names, and just get rid of them.
Yeah. Now, look, even though there may not be that much of them, we always emphasize here that legal immigration is the real problem. Here, though, you are talking about people who are locked up for a reason, and it's not because they, don't meet the Australian values.
Because they're using the fucking Chinese, the Chinese pipeline that originally. Yes. By the way, when we talk about Vietnam, when we talk about heroin and opiates and etc., you have to realize that the Chinese government set up an entire pipeline to funnel opiates into fucking Vietnam as a painkiller for soldiers during the Vietnam conflict.
Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, opiates are a painkiller, so
yes,
makes sense. Yeah.
Also, blame Turkish people because they allowed it to happen. Anyway.
Okay, well, the other piece of immigration news we've got for you was, what I thought was a very good hit piece, actually, from the Australian on here. So, he is the Home Affairs and Immigration Minister now, after he took both portfolios from Claire O'Neill and Andrew Giles. But how about this? Andrew Giles was always grilled for, many different things. But one of them was failing to cancel visas. So you had these ridiculous decisions that were made where visas were reinstated by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal because they'd say things like, oh, this person's got a job here. So therefore, even though they're like a violent rapist or whatever, we won't deport them. We'll keep them here because they've got connections, so-called, to Australia.
Oh,
and when that was going on, Andrew Giles was doing nothing about it. Once there was a bit of media attention, all of a sudden then Andrew Giles started to cancel those visas. And what was it? Oh, yeah, he went on, well, as the Australian referred to it, as a visa cancelling spree, where he'd cancelled 77 visas in under a year. Now, you want to know how many visas Tony Burke has cancelled since he came into the position? 0. Now, this
I was going to say it doesn't register.
I mean, you would have thought, because remember, Andrew Giles was effectively sacked from this position. I mean, technically a reshuffle or whatever. But as soon as a reshuffle was announced, everyone knew that Andrew Giles would be out of a job. So, he was someone who left this portfolio with his tail between his legs. And you would expect then that the incoming minister, Tony Burke, would not want to make the same mistake again. But apparently not. Now, to be completely fair here, government sources, so Labor, have responded to this, and they're claiming that he has cancelled 22 visas since the end of July. So, I don't know. It's either you believe the Australian or you believe the Labor Party. I'm not particularly inclined to believe either, so we'll let you decide what it means there. But, when you've got this guy telling Australian nationalists to leave Australia, I think that probably tells you all you need to know about who your Home Affairs and Immigration Minister is. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show, by the way.
Yes.
All right, so on the issue of foreign students. So I've got 2 articles here for this week, one from the ABC and one from the Australian. And this is a show of true bipartisanship because both of them are talking about how detrimental
we love Indians.
Okay, so look, the angle that the ABC is taken here is talking about the widespread uncertainty that this is creating within universities. So universities don't know how to, say, allocate how many people can enroll in one course, for example. They can't adequately gauge the demand that there is for particular courses. And it also, might be hard to determine student accommodation numbers and things like that, because there is apparently a lack of clarity about all of this. Now, there are, I believe, only another 2 weeks of Parliament left, and then that is actually the last sitting for the whole year until, Parliament resumes in, I think, February. So that is somewhat fueling the uncertainty. But, I mean, we did have basic figures given to us by Jason Clare, who was the Education Minister. They were basically looking for a 30% reduction. They already slowed down the approval of student visas. That, believe it or not, actually happened this year. And it's believed that it cut the amount of student visas by 24%.
Well, I want to see the graph that relates student visas to university rape. I imagine they're 1-to-1.
Yeah, it would be quite a correlation. I'm sure would be shown there. But anyway, because we don't have the minutiae in the detail, they're not happy about that. Now, if we go with the figure of around 30%, which is what it's estimated to cut for 2025, well, the Australian is unhappy because this would apparently wipe $4 billion from the Australian economy. And this is because foreign students spend, apparently, nearly $14 billion in local shops, cafes, and takeaway businesses.
And how much do they leech as, people under a different name, by the way? Actually got told this when I was a teaching fellow, that the Indians would actually register themselves under 2 different names and receive double student benefits, and etc. Work twice the hours.
Wow.
And also work for their cousin.
Yeah, well, look, one of the other reforms that Jason Clare announced was like an end to visa hopping. And that just meant, they just keep going from temporary visa to temporary visa, and they'll say things like, oh, I'm a student again, I'm actually studying. And then it turns out that where they're studying is just a front. It's a fake institution. And really what they're doing is cash in hand work. And they're just not declaring it. That is absolutely rife in the system. So it's not
in front of me, in my presence, I have literally had a Indian call another Indian like a Damit, Darita, whatever the fuck it is. I literally had like the caste system like called up because like oh, you're not gonna go get me my coffee before I go into this other lecture. That's your place, subhuman.
Well, yeah, not now, man. Now they're civil engineers, structural engineers. That's their place now. Okay. So on to A News. And we're just going to talk briefly about the South Australian Voice to Parliament. So remember, they do have a state-level version of the Indigenous voice. It came into effect a few months ago, and it's said to be...
And it's done wonders, right? It's done wonders.
Well, remember, it's the test run. This is the one we were all told. Remember originally they were going to have it before the referendum. And the reason was to, show the Australian public how it really works and how good of a job it would do. And then they just kept postponing it. And that made a few people say, I wonder why. Are you afraid of what the results might be? And well, guess what? Now that we actually have had it in effect for a couple of months, well, you've got 4 elected members and a senior staff member who have resigned. And this is only months after those elections were held. And so another elected member has raised concerns about the functionality of the body. Now, we don't really have details on this yet, but I mean, this is just like ATSIC. Once it gets going, it obviously it takes in X amount of government funds, and then there's a dispute over where those funds are going. In the case of ATSIC, it was going into people's pockets. Corruption was found to be widespread. Pauline Hanson was pointing it out at the time.
Got censored for doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people just said she was crazy. And then eventually John Howard had to bite the bullet and abolish ATSIC because it turned out Pauline was right. She's since been wrong in a hell of a lot more things, but anyway, it's another conversation. So, yeah, they've been talking about barriers that have been put before them and that they haven't really had the kind of freedom that they're looking for to say and do what they want.
Is it called your frontal lobe? Is that the biggest barrier?
Well, man, I looked at, some of these candidates and they don't look very Aboriginal. Some of them just don't look Aboriginal at all. It's just, they're just Bruce Pascoe types, they grow like a big beard in an attempt to make themselves look Aboriginal.
Like the haka thing and fucking like, it's to Oriot or like the haka thing in New Zealand.
You just get a chin tattoo. Then you look like a Maori. But anyway, look, I say that look forward to more of this, as in more people quitting, more people saying that they feel frustrated about any progress that it's making because you've simply got bureaucrats lining their pockets with the public funds, and that it doesn't actually go towards things like, say, reducing Aboriginal criminality and incarceration, which are supposed to be the kind of goals they're attaining They never do. Okay, so on the issue of crime, an investigation has wrapped up in the Northern Territory, and this was about racism within the Northern Territory Police Force. Of course, this was spurred on by the actions of Zachary Rolfe, who shot dead Kumanjai Walker in complete self-defense. If you don't believe me, the body
nearly 3 years ago, and also we covered it immensely, and also we detailed it immensely.
He stabbed Zachary Rolfe multiple times with a pair of scissors, and also the other cop who was there. They then performed CPR on him, trying to keep him alive, but apparently the guy was shot in cold blood. Anyway, there was one racist aspect to policing in the Northern Territory that they found. I'm pretty sure we covered this at the time, but they had like a racist awards night. So they had awards for people dealing with Aboriginal criminals, and they would give them names. So like one of them was like caution for a rape. That's all that needs to be said. That was one of the awards that was given out. So the investigation said, okay, something like this was racist, it was in bad taste, it shouldn't happen, and, police and those involved have been disciplined as a result of it. Now, get this, though. The investigation has said that besides this one thing, these racist awards, that they've actually have found no further evidence of racist behaviour in the Northern Territory Police Force since 2015. And they are now...
Oh, 2015.
So that's, what is that, 9 years? So that's basically one racist incident in 9 years.
That was the first actual BLM riot that actually caused some damage. 2015.
They did have BLM riots in the Northern Territory, didn't they?
Yes, they did. But also, again, it's America. Unfortunately, we're culturally tied to them.
Well, even when Zachary Rolfe shot Kumanjai Walker, I remember there was I don't know if you call them riots.
Yeah, fentanyl Floyd.
Yeah, but they did go and do some rowdy protests outside the police station and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they weren't completely pillaging.
They also burnt down Old Parliament House, if you remember.
Well, yeah, but I mean, for starters, that's in Canberra, and they just burned down the front of it. They caused several $100,000 worth of damage.
Yes,
I believe. Yeah, but I'm just specifically talking in the Northern Territory, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to gauge, terror and fucking disorderliness in the Northern Territory, considering its state. It's always in a state of terror and disorderliness because, well, I won't even call them fucking chimpanzees because I think chimpanzees would be more orderly.
Well, I mean, even some gorillas, remember Coco?
Yes.
Coco has a higher average IQ than... sorry, Coco has had...
By one standard deviation.
Yeah, by, smarter than Africans and and Aborigines. So, well, look, a lawyer who represents Aboriginal police officers in the Northern Territory has slammed that investigation. She's called it flawed and an attempt to wipe the slate clean. Now, I've actually got to say I might believe her here because, as we've said many times, if you are a cop in the Northern Territory, in Darwin or Alice Springs or whatever, and you're not racist, there must be something wrong with you. Because every day you are almost exclusively dealing with Aboriginal crime, and it would make it pretty hard for you not to put two and two together. So I got to say, I am actually a bit skeptical of this report saying that there weren't any acts of racism. I guess it also depends on how high their bar was. Like maybe they weren't just talking about conversations or individual comments, but did racism actually come to fruition in a group context like it did with these awards? That could be true. But I mean, when those text messages were leaked of Zachary Rolfe referring to Aborigines as coons, I was not the least bit surprised. I did kind of think, maybe that looks bad for him. But, like, how could you not think like that being a cop in that environment?
Anyway, so they lobotomized this person.
Okay. Now, on the issue of Aboriginal incarceration, here in Western Australia, it has, in the last year, the last financial year, has actually risen by 17.4%.
I wonder why.
Yeah, well, okay, well, let's go through the reason why they, what the WA government, what reasons they're giving here. So
they don't.
They're blaming it on cost of living pressures and on a recent wave of methamphetamine use that has been disproportionately impacting Indigenous communities.
Oh, but now that's the cost of living for the groceries that I don't pay for, the house that I don't pay for the fucking utilities that I don't pay for, and also for the meth that I get money for anyway.
Man, a couple of weeks ago I was shopping, and I'm pretty sure it was a woman anyway, Aboriginal, full blood, came up.
I love that. By the way, for the audience, I'm pretty sure she's a woman. There's very little difference between the genders of Aboriginals.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It was ambiguous, but I am pretty sure it was a woman. But anyway, she came up and mumbled something completely incoherent to me, and then I was like, I said, like, are you looking for money? Because I figured that must be what she's looking for. And then she said no, and then she held up in her arms, right? She had like a pack of chicken and yogurt and some other stuff. And she says, no, can you buy all of this for me? Because I'm hungry. So she had actually gone and like done her shopping, like picked out all of her items. Shit. And then she was just looking for a white fella to pay it for.
Oh, dude, same story over here. Like, I was out with a fucking lady, and it was like, could you spare some money? Could you spare some money? And it was like this Aboriginal with this little fucking imp hanging off her. It's like, can you spare some money for this? And I was like, that's lube and condoms, love. I mean, like, if only it was retroactive.
Okay, well, look, when they mentioned the methamphetamine spike, I'm willing to believe that because there was actually somewhat of a time lag in terms of how long it took for meth to get into the more remote parts of Australia. That has since been made up for, I believe. It's pretty much available across the entire state now. So I can imagine how that would be contributing to it. But look, dare I also say that it's to do with the fact that we've had so much media coverage here on Unit 18, where you had that Aboriginal shithead, commit suicide or however it happened. But the point is, it was the first ever death in juvenile prison, even though it happened in Casuarina. It didn't actually happen in Banksia Hill. So whenever you get a lot of coverage on something like that, those in jail and those out of jail begin to smell fear. They know that police and custodial officers...
White man will fold.
Well, they're worried that, the media is going to turn on them, or they're going to be disciplined at work for, being too mean to them. Arresting them when they could have diverted them to some program or whatever. And as a result, they're committing more crime. Much more crime.
Well, again, unfortunately, people in Western Australia, the Northern Territory, I guess South Australia to a degree, you have to deal with this because now they're activated. They feel that they're owed something.
Yeah. Now, look, the other thing they're naming here is that they said that there's too many people on remand at the moment. So, their trial dates keep getting postponed or whatever. So you got a lot of people who are in jail who have not actually been convicted. And why is that happening? Well, they're saying that there's a lack of experienced lawyers. So, criminal and, would it be also like, legal aid type lawyers who deal with this kind of stuff. There's a shortage of them. Even though there are far too many people with law degrees now, or, there's too many law students, and there has been for a while. I read the other day that apparently 2/3 of law graduates in Australia don't become lawyers. So even though you've got this shortage of, criminal lawyers or social welfare lawyers, we've got too many people studying law, but they never get anywhere with it. It's a lot like with psychology. Too many psychology students, too many people with psychology degrees, yet at the same time, there is a shortage of clinical psychologists because there's just too little people who actually take that initial qualification and then take the next step, take the postgraduate course or whatever it is they've got to get into that profession. They're just not doing that. So that's an issue with the education system too, and how we keep pushing people to go to uni.
It's not the education system; it's actually the student involved in that point. They are looking for the most commercially viable degree. I actually was going to be a diagnostician. I don't mean to cut you down, but I was looking to be a diagnostician and do like a medical degree and etc. But yeah, like a lot of the guys, they want to do like their post-grad fucking pharmaceutical or their post-grad fucking nursing, whatever, etc. That's why you're right in one way, but no, it's not for the same reason. It's just literally just for the fleecing reason, not for the uselessness reason.
Well, I mean, it's also universities lowering their entry scores so that more people enroll in the courses, and that may mean that they're churning out lower quality graduates, but they're making more money in the process. So
yes,
there's all sorts of things we can point to. Okay.
Yeah, again, I'm an engineer 6 times over in Bangladesh.
You would be, yeah. All right, well, let's talk about drugs now. So, and by the way, apologies, when we were away, we actually missed 2 elections. I kept going on about how I was looking forward to covering the Queensland election, and then in the end we didn't even do it. But we also didn't cover the ACT election, where Labor have been voted back in, and I think they're on, 26 years in power in the ACT, something crazy like that. Very long time. But anyway, in Queensland, Labor weren't so lucky. They were turfed out after, I think, a little over 10 years in power. And you have a new Premier, David Crisafulli, and the last Labor government put in drug reform that made it so if you were caught in possession of hard drugs, so, not talking about marijuana here, we're talking about heroin, cocaine, those kind of drugs, you would have to be caught 3 times before facing criminal charge. So the first time, you would simply get a warning. On the second and third occasions, you're offered a place in a diversionary program run by healthcare workers. So even if you're caught on the third time, you can get out of paying a fine by turning up to one of these stupid seminars where they just tell you the drugs are bad. that kind of thing. So David Crisafulli was asked at a press conference recently whether they would be repealing those laws, and he said yes. He has not said exactly what the detail is. Says simply that the laws will be repealed. That might just mean they'll go back to the old system, but yeah, we'll see. And yeah, look, on the whole, I guess that's a good move. Because, we were told for a good while that decriminalization was really only going to apply to marijuana. And then, as time has gone on, we've seen that it just ends up spreading to the more dangerous, the more lethal drugs, as it has here. In Victoria, there's another move to crack down on illegal tobacco and cigarettes. So,
I mean, to be fair, Finian, they've been firebombing those places.
Have they?
Yeah. Also, they raided one over here.
Okay, well, I mean, what is the percentage? Like, when it comes to the overall price of a pack of cigarettes, what percentage is tax? It's a majority.
70%.
70. Wow.
70, yeah.
So it's like that's a huge amount.
Times a pack of cigarettes by 0.3. That's how you get it in America, Indonesia. Oh god, I could buy a packet of cigarettes for about $8 in Japan. Same cigarettes, by the way.
Yeah.
And I don't smoke.
And we've obviously also got the plain packaging laws, and you can't even display them in the shop. They're always under the counter. You've got to go up and ask for them. So anyway, that, as you can imagine, has somewhat fueled a black market trade of illegal cigarettes. They do tend to be cheaper. I don't know if that also means they're harsher. I don't know. I don't know if that really.
Oh shit! Yeah, dude, Indonesian tobacco is fucking terrible.
Yeah, you've tried it.
No, just got the opinion from one of my coworkers. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, see, I wouldn't know. I've never been a smoker, thankfully. Anyway, in Victoria, they are looking to establish a tobacco licensing scheme for retailers and give police more power and resources to crack down on illegal sellers, and establish a tobacco regulator with dedicated inspectors.
Okay, cool. So make a registry so the Lebanese gangs can firebomb you. All right.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of the places where they've been selling these illegal cigarettes have been in legitimate businesses.
Yes. And that's the point.
It's just overlooked.
On purpose, yes.
Yeah, it's sort of an open secret that this particular store sells them. But as long as you're discreet about it, you can go there and buy it and no one really cares. Well, the government doesn't see it that way. And dare I say that's because they're missing out on all that tax money. I mean, we're always told that the reason why it's 70% tax or whatever is simply because they're trying to discourage the use of tobacco. I've got trouble believing that because the government makes
not just $900 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, this is excise tax, so you've got GST, which is on everything, just about, yeah, and then you've got excise, which is like a sin tax. So that's on petrol. It's also on alcohol, and even more so on what you call alcopops, which is pre-mixed drinks, like Cruisin or something. And that was supposedly designed to protect the physical health of teenage girls because, they were drinking like lolly water where you couldn't really taste the alcohol, causing themselves too much damage. So I say no, all of that's a front basically for just collecting more tax dollars.
Yeah, it is. What are you going to do about it?
So look, if you are selling that tobacco without a license, you could face a fine of $355,000, or a 15-year jail term. So, yeah.
15-year jail term, $358,000. Oh god, if I actually get, your average fucking shop worker, if I get caught selling this illegal tobacco, illegally, I'm going to get firebombed and gutted from the inside out.
Wait, sorry, that was just for an individual. So if you're a business, your fine can be $1.7 million.
Oh, there we go. That makes an absolute shit ton of difference outside of being burnt alive. God spare them. God, a big fine to a business that I could just, scuttle and walk away from, rather than being gutted and burnt alive at my home with my kids and my wife and etc. Wow, God, that makes a huge difference.
Look, man, I'm still anti-smoking, and I'd like to remind everyone that one of the very first government campaigns against smoking happened in the Third Reich.
To translate the propaganda sign, it says as he consumes the cigarette consumes him.
Right.
Yes.
And it was Jewish advertising that got women into smoking as well, by the way.
That's why the first suffragette campaign had women smoking in front of it, I believe.
Okay, let's move on to climate change, and we'll go back to talking about Donald Trump. So one of Trump's other pledges was to reverse much of the green energy policy of the Biden administration. So that includes slashing investment in various green energy technologies and industry. Now, Kevin Rudd is saying, while of course he thinks that is a very bad idea, America being a global leader and everything is not exactly showing the world the way when it comes to fighting climate change, he is still saying that this could work to Australia's advantage. Why is that? Well, those industries that were previously seeking American investment are now going to have to look elsewhere. And so with our Future Made in Australia scheme, Anthony Albanese is going to be saying, well, Australian companies
invest in us.
Yeah, they can actually be the one to do. And
who actually pays
that green energy economy.
God, I love the green energy economy. We're green energy, exporter. I think that's the term they're using. We're a green energy exporter. Yeah, but who's paying for it?
Yeah, well, much of it is the government, obviously. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a government scheme.
Yeah, the investors want a return on their investment. So where's the return coming from? Oh, it turns out your bank account.
Right, because if it doesn't actually yield a return in the private sector, well, you get bailed out by the government. And yeah, I mean, that's why green energy is forever pushing our prices up, because it's not sustainable. It's not affordable. It's not reliable. So the government always has to prop it up, and it comes at our expense.
Again, Jesus Christ, man! We're getting killed over here.
Yeah. Now look, I'll just skip stories here. I kind of got mine out of order. Staying on Trump. God, I'm not sure about this, but I don't think Trump is committed to net zero by 2050.
No, he's not.
He's not. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so.
He didn't agree with the Paris Accord.
Right. So yeah, I do remember that Trump said he wants to pull, or he wants to stay right away from the Paris Accords. All the targets that are set there, he doesn't want America to have anything to do with it. So members of the National Party here in Australia, and even the Liberal Party, are getting on Peter Dutton's back about this and saying, hey, look, not only was Trump elected, but he won the popular vote this time. Pretty rare thing for Republican presidents to get. That shows that there must be a whole lot of grassroots opposition to net zero by 2050.
Or at least a democratic mandate.
Yeah. So they're saying to him, look, it's great that you have endorsed nuclear power and have come up with a way of funding it and everything. But why don't you take that next step and just say we're no longer committed to net zero by 2050? I mean, most of the nationals support that. They just had to support this in the party room through gritted teeth. And then you had MPs like Matt Canavan, who went to the back bench because, a position on the front bench for him would just be untenable when he goes on Sky News knocking these net zero policies all the time. So, the federal election, by the latest, is going to be May next year, and that really is not that long away. They're saying, you want to kind of put in the knockout punch here, you could go in with this. Now, my prediction is that, look, they're right. I think that the coalition could actually win the next election quite easily if they were to get rid of net zero by 2050. But unfortunately, my other prediction is they won't. I don't think Dutton has the political will to actually go that far. And he would get pushback from state premiers like David Christophily, who, remember, does not support nuclear. And I don't think that Dutton would be willing to take that on, even though I think it would give him the potential to turf Albo out after only one term and make him only the second prime minister.
He supported the fucking international students bill. Oh, sorry, not supported. Vetoed the international students bill. He's already lost the popular vote. What do you think the Australian public is actually looking for at this point? It's countrywide stability. It's housing prices. It's the cost of living. It's living, actually, really.
Yeah, it's. Poll after poll shows that cost of living is the number one issue. And you've also got immigration right up there because people kind of see that as the same issue.
And also I've seen
housing crisis.
I've seen active anti-racist people in my life now become racist because they actually know what Indians are like.
yeah, they do.
Anyway, so
let's go through some of the other climate news that we've got. So the Northern Territory government, so remember they were recently elected as well, the Country Liberal Party. They're promising to fast track what they call sluggish private investment. So these are projects that are being held up because of specifically green tape. Red tape generally, but more specifically green tape. So they've actually appointed this guy called Stuart Knowles, who is the former general manager of INPEX, which is an oil and gas giant. So, look, that would make him qualified for the job, I got to say. But naturally, this is sending greetings nuts because this is a guy who is effectively in charge of saying whether or not you meet environmental regulations. So it was a very deliberate appointment, obviously. But yeah, I still support basic regulations, including environmental ones, of course. But it's just amazing some of these projects, they can take up to a decade to actually get going. It can take that long, 10 years just to actually get the approval for a particular project. It's really crazy what some of them have to go through. So, yeah, I don't have a problem there. And just lastly, it looks like Anthony Albanese is not going to give further detail on emission cuts targets. We know that they support net zero by 2050. I forget what the figures are exactly, but they do have a target for 2030, I believe. I just can't remember what they are off the top of my head. But no more. And dare I say, the reason why he's not giving any more is because he doesn't want to scare people too much, because people are associating all of these emission cut targets with higher energy prices, with inflation. So maybe Albo is actually playing it safe here and saying, well, look, we don't want to appear too environmentally radical to the public because they're simply going to fear it's going to hurt their hip pocket. And if that's what he's thinking, he's right.
Again, like, imagine being so fucking, like ham-fisted about this kind of thing.
So let's talk about the economy. So our treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has acknowledged that he still wants to brag about the achievements of the Labor government, but he is acknowledging that there is still a lot more groundwork to make up for how much cost of living has gotten out of control in the past 2 or 3 years. Now, despite all of the successes that he wants to talk about, that includes things like, a low unemployment rate, a lot of people just sort of look at their everyday life and say, I don't see that. I mean, I can't remember what the figure is, but I think unemployment is said to be 4.1 or 4.2% at the moment. Yet at the same time, man, I'm hearing all the time about people like struggling to find a job, or maybe they've got a job and they want a different job and they just can't find one and they just feel stuck where they are. So I think the actual unemployment rate or underemployment rate is a hell of a lot higher than what Jim Chalmers says. And the polls are showing that as well, because the polls are showing that they don't believe the government is doing enough to ease pressures on the cost of living. Now, Peter Dutton is also kind of under pressure regarding their version of the Stage 3 tax cuts. So remember, Albo did go through with Stage 3, which was part of, obviously, a 3-stage plan put in place by Scott Morrison. But when he did that, it was tweaked. So Stage 3 meant that you had tax cuts applying to people with lower incomes. That's the basics of it. There was more detailed than that. That was the basics. So Peter Dutton said that he wanted workers earning more than $150,000 to also have a tax cut. He's now not really talking about that anymore. In fact, he basically said, well, he did say that the Stage 3 tax cuts as implemented by the Labor government was a good change. So that's Dutton involved in Me Tooism rather than offering an alternative. And generally speaking, that is not a good move in politics. You've got to come up with something different. But he doesn't seem to be doing that. So yeah, we can probably expect to see no major announcements on climate change and no major announcements on taxation for the next federal election. Okay, now, an announcement that we have had, though, regards housing. Because, of course, getting into the detail of cost of living, this is definitely, right up there in the top of the list. So a new $900 million fund, federal government fund, would give grants to states and territories if they enact productivity-enhancing policies, which includes things like slashing red tape in housing construction and wait times and those kind of things.
Infinite density for infinite Indians. I love that.
Right. So without going too far into my usual rant, yes, of course, that means like forcing councils to approve of higher density living, subdividing the property lots.
$2 million fucking split.
Yeah. Now, look,
and like the $2 million split that we did over here in West Australia. Yes.
Look, I'm all for building out, but not for building up. All right, there's still a hell of a lot of land that is, you're just not allowed to develop it. Full stop. You see this. There's some areas of Perth you can drive to where you swear you're out in the bush, like it is that rural around it, and nothing is being done with the land.
Munda is nice.
Huh?
Necromunda is actually better. No, Kalamunda.
Oh, Kalamunda. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like that about Kalamunda. I mean, yeah, and I don't think that the entire, like all of Kalamunda and that should.
You got suburban housing and fucking transportation, and it looks nice, and you got the trees, and there's birds all around, and like it looks like a place that is actually well developed. And then you bring it back down to, let's say, like, fucking God, Daniela, Mirrabooka.
I mean, I'm glad we do have places like that are still pretty near to, like the CBD. How long do you have to drive out of Melbourne to find a place like that? Bloody long time.
2.5 hours.
Yeah. So, anyway, this is bribe money, and but it's not like this hasn't been done before. This has been done several times where they've used grants. They've used this carrot approach where the states can take extra federal money if they were to just get those housing developments through. And yeah, unfortunately, that just means building more apartment blocks. Even in places that are like well away from the CBD, they're building these massive apartment blocks now. And yeah, we're just getting closer and closer to what it's like to live in Melbourne and Sydney all the time. And I fucking hate it. Okay. Now, remember this one. Still talking about high-density housing. So this was Labor's plan. We've gone through this a couple of times, which was to have affordable, long-term apartments for rent. So in other words, these aren't places you go to, actually buy the apartment. It's not a place, you can maybe rent, and then if you're lucky and you save up enough one day, you can buy it. These would be long-term rentals. Think New York, think Amsterdam, places like that where no one actually owns an apartment. So that is what Labor is trying to build more of. And they've been trying to get the Greens and the Coalition to support this latest plan that includes, I can't remember, it's in the tens of thousands. So you might remember that the Coalition has a problem with this because they see it as anti-home ownership. And they've definitely got a point.
Yes.
You're talking about rentals for eternity. But the Greens had a problem with it because they said they still weren't affordable enough. Because remember, the Greens don't care about home ownership. They'd be quite happy for all of us to live in pods, so long as our rent is affordable. So anyway, the Greens want 25,000 new homes to be built from existing applications to the Housing Australia Future Fund. So they basically said, look, we will support this if you support that. So they're still in negotiations. We'll see how it goes. But as it stands right now, the Coalition still opposes it because whichever way they do it, whether they go with Labor's way or the Greens' way, it's still not about actually promoting home ownership in Australia. And yeah, I mean, look, if that is simply just a Liberal ideal or a Coalition ideal, they may not be always the best at fighting for it. But that on paper, I'm certainly much more in agreement with the Coalition on. All right, let's move to industrial relations.
I was going to say, like, Jesus fucking Christ, I want to kill the person who actually, came up with that idea. Figuratively,
yeah, well,
by the way.
I mean, how long have, like, the Democrats in America supported, urban planning arrangements like that? Very long time. Labor
all that we wanted for people. I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna say, like, all that we wanted for, like, people, and again, like, our enemies, blah blah blah, our people as well. home ownership is one of the main things. Like, do we want our people in fucking bug boxes or renting forever or etc.? Do we just... No, of course not.
All right, so industrial relations. As we all know, new government in Queensland, and the LNP are looking to rip up an agreement with the CFMEU. First of all, I'll just say that the CFMEU is going to be investigated for alleged links to, what a surprise, bikie gangs and criminal syndicates. Now, as we know, those investigations are already underway in New South Wales and in Victoria. I guess you could say that the Queensland branch is sort of seen as the third worst in the country. So they're under investigation too. We'll wait and see what happens. Remember, just like every other branch, they are under administration too. So, they're effectively under government control for at least, 3 years. So anyway, in Queensland, the CFMEU currently have an agreement that was brokered with former Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, known as the Best Practice Industry Conditions, or BPIC policy. Now, this was basically like a large-scale enterprise bargaining agreement that laid out pay and conditions for construction workers who were working on major state projects, so like big infrastructure programs. So that included, for example, $100 a week for a worker who was forced to use their own mobile phone or tablet on the job, and double time if you have to work in the rain. So I know that on some construction sites, if you're on an EBA set by the CFMEU, if it rains, you actually just walk off. You just stop working.
Yeah.
And if it rains for like too long, you eventually just get sent home.
Yep.
I also know that I think it's if the temperature reaches 37.5, you just get sent home.
Which state?
Huh?
Which state?
I'm talking WA here. That's what I know.
38 degrees.
Is it 38?
38, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I mean, these kind of conditions, they are actually the type of things that the CFMEU demands in their EBAs. Anyway, the new LNP government, they said that they're going to rip this up entirely. So, let me just read out some of these other details under BPIC. Workers can down tools if the air temperature reaches 35 degrees or 29 degrees and 75% humidity. How about that? Now, I agree, like, a hot, humid day is, like, worse than, like, a really, really hot, dry day. Sticky heat is the worst kind of heat. But I am surprised that they worked that into an EBA. So anyway, all that is due to be torn up. Man, 35 degrees, that seems a bit low to me. Like you were just saying it's 38 degrees in WA.
To call it immediately, yes, 38 degrees.
Yeah. So naturally, CFMEU pissed off about that. I don't know. It'll be an interesting test of their industrial bite now that they are under administration. We'll see how they are best able to flex their muscles in all of this, because there's no way they're going to take this lying down. That was a long-standing arrangement that they had with the Queensland government, and now it's suddenly going to be torn up. And they're definitely going to make a stink about it. Okay, so New South Wales nurses, they went on strike last Wednesday. Not a surprise it happened because they had been threatening industrial action for some time. They've gone on strike at least one other time this year. I know we've talked about that. they're still demanding a 15% pay rise, like a one-off one, as in, not 15% drawn out over 3 years or whatever, just you give us 15% right now. Now, apparently, New South Wales nurses are the worst paid in the country. I'd be willing to believe that, especially considering how little governments have been willing to budge. Much of that, of course, you can blame on the previous Liberal governments, because remember, Chris Minns has not actually been in power for all that long. You got to think back to the days of Gladys and Barry O'Farrell, etc., who kept this
back to the days of pork barreling and fucking terror and, to be honest, Mediterraneans.
Well, look, and I don't think this is the last bit of industrial action they'll be taking, because despite this action on Wednesday, it looks like the New South Wales, the Minns government, is not budging on this issue still. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Okay, so lastly on IR, mining companies. They've launched what the Australian calls an extraordinary attack on BHP, Rio Tinto and other big miners in WA for their warning their ultra-aggressive, irresponsible approach to employment conditions in the Pilbara risked radicalising workers. So what? So what this is, right? This is like the mining unions, which includes the CFMEU, by the way, saying you're going to turn your workers into a bunch of communists who are just straight out anti-capitalists unless you start treating them better. You should really just want them to be these middle ground working class types who just support unions and the Labor Party and that kind of thing. Now, employers are hitting back by saying that the unions are taking advantage of what they say is productivity sapping power that was taken advantage of thanks to the Labor government's same pay, same work laws. So that included things like if you were, say, hired through a labour hire group, and
so you got fired.
Yeah, and your wages were lower than someone who was directly employed through the company, well, then they would be forced to pay the same wage. Now, not a surprise that, yes, the union has jumped in and taken advantage of those laws, and they have been able to secure better wages and conditions for many people who are working the mines in regional WA. But yeah, they're still at each other's throats over all of this. And they're looking for a further 5% wage rise across the industry. Now, why are they looking for it across the industry? Because of the return to pattern bargaining, or, nowadays we call it multi-employer bargaining. So the unions are taking advantage of that as well, and that is putting them at loggerheads with the mining giants like BHP. So
I will say good because I don't like Andrew Forrest. I liked his father, John Forrest. At least John Forrest was an asshole. Andrew Forrest has no personality whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know. I used to see him sometimes in the CBD, just walking around by himself. It was kind of weird. Seeing like one of the richest guys in the world, pretty much just walking around by himself, like William
down
Street.
in Closeflow at the beach bar and etc.
I didn't see him down there. I saw him in the CBD. I saw him like he used to that McDonald's that's in like Hay Street or whatever. I used to see him walk past there. Anyway, so let's go to state politics. So the WA Liberals. Do we remember Dr. Thomas Bruff? So this guy is not an MP. He's won pre-selection for the seat of Albany in WA. And this is the guy who said that some LGBT groups count pedophiles among their ranks. We remember him? Maybe it's ringing the bell now because we did defend this guy on several occasions, and I did say that I was very surprised that this guy actually won pre-selection in any Liberal Party seat. I mean, this is not a seat that the Liberals currently hold. I can't remember if Albany is like a marginal seat or not. I'd have to look into that. But I just thought, a guy who, at least compares the LGBT movement with pedophilia and then gave a limited apology. Like he basically said, oh, look, most people in that community, they're not into that stuff, but some of them are. That's basically what he said later. And that amazed me too. I thought as soon as I got on his case about it, and considering the fact that he was a member of the Liberal Party and wanted to run for the Liberal Party, I thought he was just going to do a complete 180 and do a grovelling apology and everything. But surprisingly, he didn't. It was a very qualified apology that he gave, and he secured his pre-selection. Well, guess what's actually been happening to this guy? He's recently taken out a restraining order against a woman because she was threatening to kill him. And this is only because this woman can be identified. He has faced several other death threats from various people and threats against his family and violence against him, etc. So this actually comes off the back of WA police saying that threats against political figures in Australia, or specifically here in WA, but I'm sure it's Australia-wide as well, have been on the increase. And of course, that
it's for payment. Actually, the Arab community over here has been a little bit too Fed posty recently.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
As in, like, Fed posting against who?
Against Liberal candidates and also Labor candidates.
Yeah, I imagine they go after Labor candidates because
yes, the party leaving. Yeah, dude. Right. Holy fucking shit. The entirety of like say Balcatta or the south of Balcatta and most of Stirling and Sorrento are literally just railing against fucking like anyone who is pro-Israel.
Yeah, look, there's that. But man, I would bet you that LGBT activists are the ones much more likely to make those kind of threats.
Yeah, probably likely, yeah.
Like, obviously, Islamists or whatever make violent threats, definitely. But, I mean, man, think of, like, in the Netherlands, where you had that guy called Pim Fortuyn, who was anti-immigration. And he was actually anti-immigration for left-wing reasons. He was a homosexual. He also didn't like how, like Arab Muslims would speak out against how decadent Amsterdam was with, the weed smoking and all that kind of stuff. But still, he was seen as this right-wing extremist. And then it was an environmentalist who assassinated him in the end, not a Muslim. So, yeah, that this guy has death threats against him and his family. That does not come as a surprise to me at all. And it'll be, interesting to see if he actually does become the victim of political violence getting into the election, which is due 8th of March. So not all that long away.
All right.
So in South Australia, David Spiers, not to be confused with the Insider's host, but the former leader of the Liberal Party. I do remember before we went on break, we did talk about how there was a video circulating of him snorting a white powder off the kitchen bench, I think it was. Some people were saying it was fake. However, he has been charged with drug possession and is due to face court. He's already faced court. I think that was just a prelim, though. Like the actual hearing has not taken place. But anyway, as you can imagine, his political career was just DOA after that, and there has been a by-election in his seat of Black, which, being the seat of a former leader, was a blue ribbon Liberal Party seat. But guess who won it? Labor did. And this is actually the second time that Labor has taken a seat from the Liberals in a by-election. And, man, it can't be because Peter Malinowskis, the Premier, it can't be that he was like some massively popular messianic figure.
Does anyone know him?
No, not many. Outside of WA, not many, guys who do a political podcast, maybe. What this really says is there's obviously something seriously wrong with the South Australian Liberal Party. I think that's what it shows. Okay, now, I mentioned that here in WA, our election is on the 8th of March. There's been some talk about that possibly conflicting with the federal election. So there's a lot of talk about Labor possibly going for an early election. Now, if we have it at exactly the 3-year mark, I think it's mid-May that we would be due to have it. But people have been talking about an April election and even a March election. In that case, it would be, if it was in March, it would be very, very close to our election here in WA. And, a lot of people just talk about how that creates voter fatigue and, people won't come out and vote. But then, of course, there's logistical issues involved too, in getting the electoral booths out and all of that. So Albo might be reluctant in that regard. But one of the signs that we're heading for those early elections is that Albanese has actually made 2 high-profile candidate announcements, and that's for the seat of Braddon and the seat of Lyons. To be making, if you were to assume that the election is not till May, that's actually very, very much ahead of time. That is, very early to be announcing candidates. Now, that said, I would say that the earlier would probably be better for Albo. And that's simply because things are not getting better, they're getting worse. And the longer that Albo stretches this out for, the less likely people are going to vote for him. All those indicators, like your wages, like inflation, the cost of housing and rent, etc., there's no signs of that letting up. It's just getting worse all the time. Albo knows that, and I bet he thinks that the support base that he's got at the moment, if that can win him an election, well, he better tap into it right now, because he's going to lose it the longer he waits. So, if I'd make a prediction, I'd say early April for the election, approximately 5 or 6 weeks earlier.
I'd say March, but actually, can they go for March? I don't think they can.
They
but
can
also,
but remember, March 8 is our poll here in Western Australia. You've got an incumbent Labor government here. Albo would be reluctant to mess things up for a Labor premier. So,
for his own fucking seat.
Well, look, he doesn't want to create a clash with. Even though Roger Cook has probably got it in the bag, the Liberals are not going to win.
People like McGowan. People like McGowan. They didn't like Cook.
No. Look, man, a lot of people struggle to name the Premier. And I mean people from WA. You ask them who's the Premier. Hell of a lot of people don't know. And just on polling, Peter Dutton's position as preferred Prime Minister actually continues to go up. News poll is still putting two-party preferred in Labor's favour, 51 to 49. But remember, Scott Morrison won the election against Bill Shorten when they were polling 52-48. So if he was able to win that election by those numbers, Dutton would be the next Prime Minister. So it's not looking good. Not looking good for Albo. Okay.
All right.
All right, let's move on to protest laws. So the New South Wales government is looking to introduce legislation this week that would see laws preventing protesters from blocking roads, bridges, and ports in New South Wales. Now, not surprising, this is all stunts performed by climate activists, exclusively. Yep. Extinction Rebellion and all those types. There's that woman who chained her fucking head to a steering wheel during peak. Huh?
I was gonna say it was the woman who fucking chained her fucking head to her own fucking driving wheel and etc.
She didn't even get a fine for that in the end.
Yeah, no, because we covered it.
Yeah. The judge ruled that she had been sufficiently traumatized by the floods in Lismore, and that excused her erratic behavior. I'm not joking. For anyone who doesn't believe me, just look that up. She was able to get off on a mental health defense because she had been traumatized by the floods in Lismore. Fucking, it's unbelievable. Imagine one of our guys getting off jail time for that.
Imagine our guys not getting fucking executed, actually.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so look, ordinarily I'm cautious about anti-protest laws and those kind of things because I'm always worried about how those laws can in the future be used against people like us. But in this case, we do not do shit like block roads and ports and shit like that. These are not tactics that we engage in. So I'm all for more action on all that stuff. Okay, now social media. Now, this is one that, has me torn, I guess, because on the one hand, I definitely do think that social media causes a lot of harm, particularly
digital identity, my nigga.
I'd like to see, young people using a lot less of it, if not just not using it at all. It would be good. But the problem we run into, of course, is that some people are saying that the only way you can enforce this is if you have a digital ID. And, what does that mean? That means Bob Hawke's old idea of a national ID, where you've got an identity card that has all of your details, your Medicare and your home address and your phone number, your employment history, whatever, and it's all there. And it would all be there on that card. That's what Hawke wanted, back in the 80s. Now we're saying that we'd have to have one of them so that you can prove what your age is to, create a Facebook account or whatever.
Again,
and, that's where I've got issues.
Everyone in our circle would love the idea of okay, so a young guy is, a young girl, etc. It's not exposed to social media, kept out of social media. The thing is, yes, again, the fucking material needed to actually enforce this kind of thing. It's digital ID. Now, could our circle avoid this, live with this, etc.? Yeah, we could. We could VPN our way out of it, but it would still be Australia has digital ID.
Well, look, I don't know if you've ever there are certain accounts that you open. I won't say what they are, but I know that sometimes when you set up an account, you've got to do something take a picture of yourself on your webcam of you holding up your driver's license or something. Or they might get you to write something down on Texter and hold up that bit of paper you're holding.
I thought you were the libertarian.
No, but I just mean you could do stuff like that. I know that still seems a bit intrusive, but that's a hell of a lot less intrusive than a national ID, So, like, if it came down to something like that, like you had to show some form of proof of age, I don't see anything wrong with that. Where I draw the line is, something like a national ID. At that point, I'll say no. Anyway,
I'd rather go back to the parents.
You what?
I'd rather go back to the parents. I'd say, like if your child is seen using social media, like under a certain age, you'll be fined.
Yeah, sure.
If we're gonna do government shit, the internet is too important for some kind of digital ID and etc. Or to basically make anyone and everyone anonymous on the internet.
Well, look, I think whatever happens, we are going to get these laws because it has bipartisan support. Labor and the coalition are supporting it. And not too many. You've got like Fatima Payman doing that ridiculous Gen Z speak thing that she did.
Oh, God.
It was highly cringe. So, yeah, I mean, this stuff is probably going to get through. They're saying that, it won't apply to all social media. It will to the big names like Instagram and TikTok and that. But there will be some exceptions based on whether or not they're performing a social good, as they put it. All right, so on free speech, Victoria is actually going to be reforming their Racial and Religious Tolerance Act again. Now, this is to give greater protection, to expand hate speech laws. And remember, whenever they say that, that simply means censorship. They're going to be expanding those laws to include race, religion, and protecting LGBTQIA plus people. That's the acronym they've gone for in this article.
Queers, yes.
Yeah, so religious groups, as you can imagine, are worried about this because it only ever means that, it means their speech is restricted, and not only that, but like their hiring practices as well, and they end up being forced into hiring sexual agents. What's that?
Christians and Muslims? I don't think Jews are really concerned about that.
Not really, no. And it's funny, like, when these kind of laws are on the table, you do get this alliance of Christians and Muslims who speak out against it. But yeah, you don't really see the Jewish groups doing so. Because they already know that those laws don't really apply to them. So what do they care if it applies to other religious denominations?
That's a weird thing, man. Like, God, I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Okay. Now, on the issue of misinformation and disinformation, the Australian had a story where they interviewed Anne Twomey. She is a constitutional law expert, and what a surprise that she predicts it'll all go very wrong if we do implement these laws. Now, the reasoning that she gave here, I don't think this is something we've really discussed before, is that, like, under these regulations, social media would be the ones who are blamed. Like, if you have an account on Facebook and you're out there...
The offending party.
Yeah, like, it wouldn't be that individual person who has that Facebook page that is, supposedly generating that misinformation.
It would be Facebook itself. Yes.
Yeah, it would be Facebook itself. And if they were found to have done that, they would be fined, X amount of money. Now, the real problem with that is that Facebook may then start taking preemptive action, and they might start, even cases that are just borderline or whatever would just get axed straight away, because there's a financial incentive to make sure that there isn't even any risk of so-called misinformation or disinformation being published on their platform. And so they take this overly zealous approach where, pages that ordinarily there wouldn't be any problem with them operating, Facebook say, oh, well, it's just too risky. Like, we probably won't get fined for this, but still it's not worth the risk. So let's ban them. And of course that's the way it would work. And it's probably what the government wants too.
Yes. I mean, it's small.
Yeah.
Relatively small.
Okay, and unrelated news, the privacy laws as well, which, that mainly had to do with the Optus hack, people's information getting stolen, sold on the dark web and all that.
They should pay, they won't pay. Congratulations, they will continue to not pay. And also get fucked and die.
Well, look, what Labor want to do here, they want to reform the Privacy Act to make businesses, responsible if there are data leaks here. And so the business lobby is saying, well, look, that obviously is going to make us, you get a lot of fines for starters, but it would also expose them to class action lawsuits as well. Even though that's already happening, I believe there is a class action lawsuit against Optus over all that stuff. And
yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Chamber of Commerce is saying that it would get even worse for them. So yeah, this will all be stuff for next year, by the way. There's no way they're going to handle all of this stuff in the last 2 weeks of Parliament for the year. So wait and see. Okay, so on gambling, the Tasmanian government is still really dragging its feet over pre-commitment cards, which is where once you lose a certain amount of money on the pokies or whatever you're playing, you get locked out and you can't play anymore that day. They have rolled out like a trial scheme in New South Wales. Apparently the amount of people who have signed up to it is like under 100. It's like barely anything. And that's,
it's voluntary.
Yeah. So you see, obviously, some people are not doing it just because, well, they don't want to, because they want to, just gamble as much as they want. But they're also doing it because of privacy reasons, because they're like, how much of my personal data is actually stored on this pre-commitment card? They don't like that aspect of it either. And so probably they're going to face the same kind of issues in Tasmania. But yeah, the ABC pointed out that there's still a lot of religious groups that are putting pressure on the government over this, because the churches do actually live with the fallout of that all the time. They get destitute people who have lost all their money on the pokies, and, they seek charity from churches. It happens a lot.
Let's go gambling!
Okay, so on education, Albo, perhaps in a move to stop bleeding off voters to the Greens, has made student debt, HEX or HELP, he's made that an issue. I can't remember what the Greens policy is on this, but they do want to, wipe...
Get rid of it entirely.
Is that what it is? Is it they want to, reduce it, or they just want to get rid of it completely?
Nix it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess that's not too radical if you compare it to, because that's what Bernie Sanders wants as well, isn't it? They call it student forgiveness. Yeah, well...
Again, things that won't fucking happen.
No. However, what Albo is proposing is a 20% cut to any existing debt. So if you've already got a HEX debt, Albo reckons he's going to cut 20% off it for you, which, yeah, that would make a difference. And apparently, there are still around 140,000 Australians that owe over $2.1 billion in student debt. Wow. And that's really like, because the HEX scheme was only introduced in the early 90s, I believe, by Paul Keating.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a lot of debt over, not too long of a time frame.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The principal of Illawong Public School, I'm sorry, I don't know which state that is in, their principal has been stood aside because Year 6 students were subjected to a graphic sex education discussion. Now, I'm not surprised by that at all. And look, I think I've said this anecdote before, but I'll just quickly go through it again. The high school that I went to was very multiracial, like multiracial before it was cool. And it was mainly like middle class though. So we had shitloads of Asians and Indians and like kind of well-to-do Arab Muslims who were there. And as you can imagine, they were pretty socially conservative. And
I went to a
remember
private boys' school, so it was full of an absolute shit ton of Jews.
Yeah, you had a bit of a different experience. Like, I think there was one Jewish student in our year. That was it. That was my exposure. So I really
like one of fucking 5 guys.
But anyway, I do remember being exposed to some pretty graphic stuff, like fucking close-ups of what STDs look like on genitals and that kind of thing. It's just scare tactics, that kind of stuff. But I remember, like, 3 or 4 years after I graduated, my school was in the newspaper. And why was that? Because parents were complaining about the sex education program. But the parents were not white Australians. They tended to be coming from all of these, dark skin types from overseas. Now, dare I say that at this public school, the same kind of thing was happening. They, for years, had been having these kind of graphic sex discussions, and it was all going fine until, they had too many Muslims enrolled there or whatever. And that is when the parents actually start complaining. And, that also is when you start to see the left eating itself, because they want to teach all of that gay, highly sexually charged material in schools. This was year 6 students, by the way. We're not even talking about high school here. This is primary school. Yeah, but at the same time, they always want to pander to the minority groups. Well, the minority groups here do not like this stuff at all. They don't want to let their kids anywhere near it. Okay, just quickly, some stories to bring us to the end here. In Victoria, a report has just shown that hospitals in Victoria are operating at a $1 billion financial deficit. So that's not even the health industry as a whole. That is simply Victoria's hospitals. $1 billion in the red. That is pretty damn serious. And the legacy of Chairman Dan. Now, on the related topic of abortion, if you want to see it as a health-based issue, Mark Butler, who is the health minister, said that Labor will not return to a 2019 policy that would have linked federal funding for public hospitals to the provision of abortions. So, in other words, the more abortions you do, the more federal funding you'll get. Now, the Greens, as you can imagine, they like that idea. And they said that they would actually increase federal funding for health by $100 million, and that hospitals would be able to access that money if they improved their abortion access, as they put it. So you kill more babies, we give you more money. Great humanitarianism there from the Greens.
No, amazing. Like, it's not dead well with them.
So Labor is facing a raft of changes to its $5.6 billion aged care bill in the final sitting fortnight. They have aimed to get it through in these 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens there. But it contains a $4.3 billion investment in systems of home care and obviously raising the wages of aged care workers. This is something that, broadly has bipartisan support, as in, yes, we need more money for aged care because we have an aging population. Of course we do. But there's still a lot of disagreement on the detail. So even though they reckon they're going to pass it before the end of the year, I don't know. All right, well, something we learned in the recent APEC summit is that the United States and Japan are going to be conducting military training off the coast in Darwin. So this is one of the ways we show that we're America's bitch still, is we still allow all of this training and war games and everything to occur in Australian territory. So look out for that, Darwinians. Oh, this story caught my eye. It's a quickie, but we've talked a bit here about how, like most Western nations, there is an issue of recruitment when it comes to the Defence Force. It is very hard to get new recruits to the ADF here in Australia for a variety of reasons. And that means that we've had to look for troops from other countries. So we've done so far with like Fijian citizens, for example. We have like that Fijian general or whatever he was, who was actually then exposed to have been involved in like torture. You remember him?
Yep, the war criminal. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now we are recruiting people from Papua New Guinea. And how is it that we are enticing Papua New Guineans to join the ADF? Well, with Australian citizenship. That's right, not a temporary visa, not a permanent visa, but just outright citizenship. Now, the government of Papua New Guinea, of course, is not happy about this because that means like a brain drain. You'd actually be taking people who are competent enough to serve in the armed forces, taking them into the Australian Defence Force, and then just taking them into Australia. Because if you're from Papua New Guinea and you get given Australian citizenship, are you going to stay in Papua New Guinea? Hell no. They're still cannibalizing each other there, for God's sake. So, yeah. I'd say good on the PNG government for taking Australia to task on that. And lastly, I'm sorry guys, you can probably tell me and Nolsey a bit out of steam here. We were going to comment on that story that 730 had last Thursday about Thomas Sewell and members of the EAM saying, if you come for our kids, we'll kill you. I just want to quickly say that that seems to be the line in the sand for most people. Most people will say that if the government comes for my kids for political reasons, then I will use violence to defend them. Most people, I think, would actually say that. But the other thing I wanted to say on it was I remember listening to that stream like over 3 months ago. That stream is months old. And the ABC, apparently through an investigation, as they put it, uncovered these comments. What, you mean you listened to a stream that was freely available on the internet to anyone? Is that what you call an investigation?
So, yes, I'll take away your children, and you expect me not to fucking react violently?
Right. It's a line in the sand that I think most people would draw. All right. Well, guys.
If that's not your line in the sand, you are a fucking faggot. Bye.
Yeah. I agree. No, I completely agree with what they said. So anyway, guys, apologies again for how long we took off. We hope you've enjoyed this 2.5 hour episode. Remember, you can now support us, theracer.biz/donate if you would like to make a financial contribution. Please take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.